Jon Snow's entire existence rests on a secret kept for 17 years, buried in the crypts of Winterfell alongside Lyanna Stark. The man everyone believed was Ned Stark's bastard son carried Targaryen blood, born of a union between Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna that was no abduction at all. They married in secret, witnessed by a High Septon, making Jon not only legitimate, but the rightful heir to the Iron Throne ahead of Daenerys herself. Ned Stark built his entire lie on the promise he made to his dying sister, watching her fade in a tower of joy that held no joy at all, only blood and whispered pleas. The secret-shaped kingdoms sent armies marching, determined who would sit on thrones and who would die in snow. Every time Catelyn looked at Jon with cold eyes, every moment Robert demanded Targaryen blood be spilled, Ned carried the weight of a truth that could destroy everything he loved, choosing honor in silence over honor in revelation. Rhaegar Targaryen's annulment changed the entire foundation of Westerosi succession without anyone knowing it had happened. The marriage to Aelia Martell, which produced 2 children and seemed to secure Dorne's loyalty, was dissolved by a High Septon whose records sat gathering dust in the Citadel. When Rhaegar stood before witnesses and wed Lyanna Stark in a secret ceremony, he wasn't creating a bastard, but legitimizing a future king. The irony cuts deep. Robert's rebellion, fought over what everyone believed was Lyanna's kidnapping and dishonor, was actually a war against a lawful marriage. Thousands died at the Trident, on the Tower of Joy, in the sack of King's Landing, all because the truth stayed hidden in marriage records no one thought to examine. Aelia Martell and her children paid the price for a political reality that had already been erased by holy decree, their deaths even more tragic for being based on a marriage that no longer existed. Ned Stark's legendary honor was built on the greatest deception of his life, a lie he told every single day for nearly 2 decades. When he returned from Robert's rebellion carrying a baby and claiming bastardry, he allowed the entire realm to believe he had broken his marriage vows with some unknown woman. The man who valued truth above almost everything chose to be seen as an oath breaker. Let his wife harbor resentment toward an innocent child, endured the disappointment in people's eyes when they looked at his supposed son. The sacrifice cut deeper than anyone knew. He protected Lyanna's memory by tarnishing his own, kept his nephew alive by claiming him as proof of his own weakness. In the quiet moments at Winterfell, surrounded by family, Ned carried the lonely burden of knowing that everyone's understanding of him was fundamentally wrong, and he could never, ever correct that misunderstanding without destroying the boy he'd sworn to protect. The secret of Jon's parentage existed in fragments scattered across Westeros, whispered in fever dreams and hidden in cryptic statements. Ned's nightmares returned always to that tower, to promises and roses and blood. Howland Reed, the only other survivor, kept the secret as faithfully as Ned himself. Bran Stark saw the truth through the eyes of the weirwood trees, watching history unfold in visions that showed him things no living person should have known. The pieces were always there for those who knew how to look. Ned's absolute certainty that Jon belonged at Winterfell. His fury when Robert spoke of killing Targaryen children, the way he never once spoke the name of Jon's supposed mother. The truth lived in silences and careful words, in what wasn't said as much as what was, waiting for the moment when it would finally emerge and change the meaning of everything that had come before. Cersei Lannister's children carried one of the worst-kept secrets in King's Landing, hidden in plain sight behind golden hair and green eyes. Not one of the three was Robert Baratheon's child, despite occupying the throne on the strength of that supposed bloodline. All three were born of the union between Cersei and her twin brother Jaime, products of a relationship that violated every law of gods and men. Jon Arryn died discovering this truth, killed before he could reveal to Robert what he'd learned through careful observation of bastards with black hair and blue eyes. Ned Stark picked up where Jon Arryn left off, following the same trail through lineages and bastards, until he too understood the fundamental lie supporting the crown. The secret cost both men their lives in different ways. Jon Arryn through poison administered by those who needed him silent. Ned through his attempt to do the honorable thing and expose the truth. The physical evidence of the Lannister children's true parentage existed in every feature, visible to anyone who thought to look closely. The Baratheon bloodline ran so strong that it had dominated every marriage for generations. Baratheon traits always showed in children, dark hair overcoming fairer colors. Yet Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen were gold and green, Lannister through and through, carrying none of Robert's Baratheon darkness. The book Jon Arryn consulted, the lineages and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms, documented this pattern across centuries. Every time a Baratheon wed a Lannister, the children had black hair. Every single time, except for these three. The evidence sat in the library for anyone to read, a genealogical truth that condemned three children for the circumstances of their birth and exposed a queen's betrayal of her king and kingdom. Cersei carried the secret like a weapon and a weakness, knowing her children's existence depended on the lie remaining intact. She'd given Robert no true heirs, instead bearing three children who represented everything he hated about her family. The king spent his nights drunk and mourning Lyanna Stark, while his supposed children grew up knowing their father's indifference. Cersei watched Robert's bastards walk the streets of King's Landing, their dark hair a constant reminder of what her own children should have looked like if Robert had truly fathered them. The precarious nature of the deception meant that anyone who discovered the truth became an enemy who had to be eliminated. Jon Arryn, Ned Stark, anyone who looked too closely at genealogies or spent too much time comparing the royal children to Robert's acknowledged bastards. They all became threats to be removed before they could speak what they'd learned. Jaime Lannister lived with the knowledge that his children called another man father, that they could never know who truly gave them life. The man who'd already sacrificed his reputation once to save King's Landing from wildfire found himself in a different sort of trap. He couldn't acknowledge his own blood, couldn't claim the children who were the only things he and Cersei had created together beyond their twisted love. When Joffrey grew cruel, Jaime saw his own features in a boy who would never know him as anything but Kingsguard. The secret meant watching his son become a monster, his daughter grow sweet and kind. His youngest boy remained gentle despite the poison of the family around him. Jaime loved three children from a careful distance, playing the role of protector when he wanted to be known as something more, trapped by choices made years before in passion and recklessness. Littlefinger understood the power of secrets about parentage, wielding information about bloodlines like other men wielded swords. He'd manipulated Lysa Arryn into marrying Jon Arryn, then convinced her to poison her own husband when Jon got too close to dangerous truths about the Lannister children. Petyr Baelish built his rise to power on knowing things others didn't, who was really whose child, who had betrayed whom, which noble houses carried secrets that would destroy them if revealed. He watched the highborn scramble and scheme, always aware that lineage mattered more than almost anything in Westeros, that questions of blood determined who ruled and who served. While lords and ladies thought their secrets safe, Littlefinger collected information in brothels and through whisper networks, patient as winter, waiting for the perfect moment to deploy each revelation for maximum advantage. The revelation of Jon's true parentage carried implications that rippled through every political calculation in Westeros. If Jon Snow was actually Jon Targaryen, legitimate son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, then Daenerys' entire claim shifted. She was no longer the rightful heir, but rather second in line behind her nephew. The alliance between Jon and Daenerys, built partly on her assumption of being the last Targaryen, rested on information that was fundamentally incomplete. Every vow Jon had taken as a bastard, and later as king in the north, existed under false premises about his identity. The secret's revelation meant that the man, who'd been treated as less than legitimate his entire life, was actually more legitimate than almost anyone. That the supposed bastard carried royal blood from both the North and the conquered dynasty. Lyanna Stark died with secrets on her lips, whispering desperately to Ned in her final moments. The tower where she lay held more than one truth. Not just the baby that would become Jon Snow, but the whole story of her love for Rhaegar, her choice to leave with him, her understanding of what that choice would mean for her family and the realm. She knew Robert would never accept the truth, that the man who thought he loved her could never comprehend that she'd chosen someone else. Lyanna made Ned promise to protect the baby, knowing what that promise would cost her honorable brother, understanding that he would carry the weight of her choice for the rest of his life. In her final breaths, she passed the burden from herself to Ned, trusting that his love for her would overcome everything else, even his devotion to truth. The crypts of Winterfell held secrets beyond Jon's origin, generations of Stark history carved in stone and buried in darkness. Beneath the castle, Stone Kings sat in silent judgment, their iron swords across their laps meant to keep spirits from wandering. These depths whispered of older truths, of promises made in the darkness of winter, of the stark words, "Winter is coming," being less warning than remembrance. Ned added no statue for Lyanna, leaving her tomb simpler than those of his ancestors, perhaps unable to bear immortalizing her in stone when doing so might reveal too much. The crypts where Jon walked as a boy, feeling the weight of Stark history, were also the resting place of his true mother, though he never knew which tomb held her. Every time Jon visited those depths, he stood near the woman who'd given him life, separated from that knowledge by Ned's necessary lie. The moment of revelation, when Jon finally learned the truth about his parents, rewrote his entire understanding of his own existence. The boy, who'd grown up as the bastard, always slightly outside the family circle, carried the blood of dragons and wolves both. Every time he'd felt less than legitimate, every moment of being treated as lesser than his siblings, existed under false premises. The truth meant grappling with a new identity while still being the same person who'd taken the black, who'd fought at the wall, who'd died and returned. Jon's whole life had been shaped by being Ned Stark's bastard. That identity forged his humility, his understanding of being an outsider, his connection to outcasts and rejected things. Learning that he was neither bastard nor truly Stark meant reconciling who he'd become with who he'd actually been all along, finding a way to remain himself while accepting a completely different truth about his blood. The secret's existence prevented a different succession crisis during Robert's rebellion itself. If Robert Baratheon, had known that Lyanna carried Rhaegar's legitimate child, the rebellion's simple narrative would have shattered. Robert could never have accepted the woman he claimed to love choosing Rhaegar willingly, bearing the Dragon Prince's son with what appeared to be consent. The revelation would have complicated everything, made Lyanna less a victim to be avenged and more a woman who'd made her own choice, made the war less about justice and more about Robert's wounded pride. Ned's decision to hide Jon's true identity wasn't just about protecting the baby, but about protecting the foundational narrative that justified Robert's entire reign. The truth would have undermined everything, turned Robert's great romance into delusion, made the thousands of deaths seem even more pointless. Benjen Stark disappeared beyond the wall, possibly carrying the weight of family secrets. As Lyanna's other brother, he might have known more than he ever said about what happened, about her relationship with Rhaegar, about the child born in that distant tower. His choice to take the Black came shortly after the rebellion ended, as if he needed distance from Winterfell and the secrets it held. Whether Benjen knew about Jon's true parentage remains a whisper in the dark, but his departure removed another person who might have known the truth, who might have posed questions Ned couldn't answer. The Wall became a refuge for men seeking to escape their pasts, and perhaps Benjen was escaping not crimes, but knowledge, choosing the simplicity of ranging and fighting wildlings over the complexity of knowing what couldn't be spoken. Howland Reed, the Crannogman who fought beside Ned at the Tower of Joy, carried the secret as faithfully as Ned himself. The only other man who survived that tower's bloodshed, Howland returned to his swamps and his moving castle, keeping silence about what he'd witnessed. His children, Mira and Jojen, eventually came to Bran Stark, helping him on his journey toward becoming the Three-Eyed Raven, perhaps drawn by purposes their father understood better than they did. Howland never came south to reveal what he knew, even when revelation might have changed everything. His loyalty to Ned ran deep enough that even Ned's death didn't compel him to speak. The secret lived in Greywater Watch as surely as it lived in Winterfell, protected by a man who understood that sometimes friendship means carrying impossible burdens without complaint, year after year, until death makes the burden irrelevant. The Tower of Joy's name carried bitter irony, a place where Lyanna died bringing Jon into the world. The tower stood in the Red Mountains of Dorne, far from northern snows, far from everything Lyanna had known. 3 Kingsguard stood watch over her: Sir Arthur Dayne, Sir Gerald Hightower, Sir Oswell Went, the best knights in the realm protecting a secret birth instead of their king. These legendary warriors died in combat with Ned and his companions, choosing death over abandoning their post. Their presence at the tower, when they might have been at the Trident saving Rhaegar, or at King's Landing protecting the royal family, spoke volumes about what they were guarding. They knew what was in that tower mattered more than conventional duty, that Rhaegar's son represented the continuation of the Targaryen line, that their oaths extended beyond the living king to the future he'd tried to secure. Robert Baratheon never knew that the child who served under him as a steward, the boy he met at Winterfell and approved for the Night's Watch, carried the blood of the man he'd killed at the Trident. The irony would have enraged Robert beyond measure. That Ned Stark, his closest friend, the man he trusted absolutely, had hidden a Targaryen under his protection for years. Robert's hatred of all things Targaryen ran so deep that he wanted every last one of them dead, down to infants and children who could pose no real threat. The man who ordered the deaths of Elia Martell's children would have demanded Jon's death without hesitation, friend's son or not. Ned understood this absolutely, knew that Robert's love for Lyanna's memory coexisted with a brutality that would extend to her son if that son bore the wrong name and bloodline. The secret of Jon's parentage demonstrates how one lie, maintained for protection, can shape the destinies of kingdoms. Without knowing his true heritage, Jon made choices as a bastard that a prince might never have made. Taking the black, ranging beyond the wall, fighting alongside outcasts and criminals. The identity Ned created for him produced a different kind of leader than the one who might have emerged if Jon had grown up knowing himself as Targaryen royalty. The man who united wildlings and Night's Watch, who died for his choices and came back, was forged in the fire of being an outsider. When the truth finally emerged, it came to someone who'd already proven his worth through actions rather than bloodline, who had learned to lead through earned respect rather than inherited right. The secret, kept so carefully for so long, ultimately created exactly the kind of leader the realm needed, though no one could have planned that outcome. Jon Arryn's death was no natural fading, but a carefully orchestrated murder that set the entire realm on its path to war. The Hand of the King died from poison administered by his own wife, Lysa Arryn, who put the Tears of Lies into his wine under the guidance of Petyr Baelish. Jon had grown too curious about the Lannister children, spending his final days visiting Robert's bastards and studying genealogies in dusty libraries. He'd discovered what Ned Stark would later learn, that golden-haired children with green eyes could not possibly be Robert Baratheon's offspring. Lysa's hand trembled as she poisoned the husband who'd never truly loved her, doing it for Littlefinger's promises and her own desperate hope that killing Jon would somehow lead to the life she'd always wanted. The act of murder was intimate and terrible, watching her husband sicken and die while pretending grief, carrying the secret of what she'd done, even as she fled to the Eyrie with their son. The letter Lysa sent to Catelyn Stark became the spark that ignited the entire conflict, a deliberate deception crafted by Littlefinger's cunning mind. Lysa wrote to her sister that the Lannisters had murdered Jon Arryn, planting suspicion exactly where Littlefinger wanted it placed. The message arrived at Winterfell and poisoned Catelyn's mind against the family that had actually done nothing to Jon Arryn at all. When Bran fell from that tower and nearly died, Catelyn saw Lannister conspiracy everywhere, connecting events that Littlefinger had carefully arranged to seem connected. The beauty of the deception was its simplicity. One letter sent by a grieving widow to her trusting sister, reframing Jon Arryn's death as Lannister treachery when the real murderers were the wife and her puppet master. Every death that followed, every battle and betrayal grew from seeds planted in that single piece of correspondence carried by a rider through the night. Littlefinger's conspiracy against Jon Arryn had layers within layers, each serving multiple purposes in his careful climb toward power. He needed Jon Arryn dead before the Hand could reveal the truth about Cersei's children, yes, but he also needed chaos to create opportunities. A stable realm under a legitimate succession gave Petyr Baelish no room to maneuver. But a realm thrown into doubt about the royal children, with great houses choosing sides and going to war, that realm became a ladder he could climb. He convinced Lysa that killing her husband was an act of love, that it would free her to be with Petyr at last. He manipulated her obsession and her desperation, turned her into a weapon, and then discarded her when she'd served her purpose. The man who started with nothing but ambition orchestrated the death of the Hand, the suspicion between great houses and the first domino that would topple an entire kingdom. Joffrey Baratheon's death at his own wedding feast was another conspiracy hidden in plain sight, blamed on the wrong person entirely. The Purple Wedding saw the young king choking and dying while his mother screamed and his new wife watched in horror. Tyrion Lannister was arrested and tried for the murder, the obvious suspect given his history with Joffrey and his position pouring the wine. But Tyrion's guilt was a convenient fiction. The real murderers were Olenna Tyrell and Petyr Baelish, working in careful coordination to remove a king too cruel and unstable to be controlled. Olenna had seen what Joffrey was, understood that marrying her beloved granddaughter Margaery to such a monster would lead only to suffering. The poison came in a crystal on Sansa's necklace, placed there by Ser Dontos under Littlefinger's instruction, taken and dropped into Joffrey's wine cup by Olenna's practiced hand during the chaos of the feast. The simplicity of Joffrey's assassination demonstrated how easily appearances could deceive in the Game of Thrones. Everyone watched Tyrion pour wine, saw the animosity between uncle and nephew, witnessed Joffrey's cruelty toward the dwarf. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Tyrion had motive, means, and opportunity. But the real plot unfolded in touches so light no one noticed them. A hairnet crystal that wasn't quite a crystal, an old woman's hand moving in the commotion of entertainment, timing calculated to the moment when attention would be elsewhere. Olenna Tyrell sat at that feast and poisoned a king, then stayed to watch him die, her face showing appropriate shock while inside she felt the satisfaction of removing a threat to her family. She confessed to Jaime years later with calm pride, telling him the truth before her own death, revealing that the Lannister who went to war over Joffrey's death had been hunting the wrong killer all along. Petyr Baelish's role in Joffrey's death served his larger purpose of acquiring Sansa Stark as both trophy and tool. He arranged for Sansa to wear the poison without knowing it, used her as an unwitting accomplice in regicide, then swept in to rescue her from the chaos that followed. To Sansa, Littlefinger appeared as savior, the man who freed her from King's Landing and the accusations of murder. She didn't understand yet that he'd authored her danger specifically to position himself as her salvation. The conspiracy removed a king, framed a dwarf, advanced the Tyrell agenda, and gave Littlefinger possession of the key to the north, all in one purple-faced death at a wedding feast. Every move Petyr made served multiple purposes, and Joffrey's death might have been his masterpiece of manipulation. The Red Wedding stands as the most infamous conspiracy in recent Westerosi history, a betrayal so complete it violated every sacred law of hospitality. Walder Frey and Rose Bolton planned the massacre for months, coordinating with Tywin Lannister to eliminate the king in the north and his army in a single night of blood. They waited until after Edmure Tully and Rosalind Frey had been married, until after guest right had been invoked and bread and salt shared, until the Starks and their men felt safe enough to celebrate and lower their guard. The signal came with a song. The Rains of Castamere, the Lannister anthem of destroying houses that defied them. Then doors closed, musicians revealed crossbows, and the feast became a slaughterhouse. Catelyn Stark died trying to bargain for her son's life. Robb Stark died with Bolton's betrayal literal in his back, and the North's independence drowned in wine and blood. The planning of the Red Wedding required absolute secrecy and ruthless calculation. Tywin Lannister coordinated from King's Landing, promising rewards that would elevate both House Frey and House Bolton. Walder Frey nursed grievances about being overlooked and disrespected, about Robb Stark breaking his promise to marry a Frey daughter. Roose Bolton had already decided the North's cause was lost, that survival meant betraying his king and siding with the winning power. They communicated through careful letters, using merchants and messengers who could be trusted or disposed of. Every detail had to align perfectly: the timing, the guest list, the placement of loyal men, the sealing of exits. The conspiracy succeeded because these men understood that in the Game of Thrones, honor was a weakness to be exploited, that the man who violated guest right completely would be cursed but alive, while the honorable man would be honored but dead. Roose Bolton's betrayal ran deeper than simple political calculation, a cold pragmatism that evaluated loyalty against survival and chose survival every time. He'd watched Robb Stark make mistakes, marry for love instead of alliance, execute Rickard Karstark and lose half his army, fail to secure the Riverlands properly. Roose saw a king who ruled with his heart, and he chose instead to serve the side that ruled with cold strategy. When he thrust his blade into Robb Stark and whispered that the Lannisters sent their regards, he was delivering a message from one killer to another. Tywin acknowledging Roose's usefulness, Roose accepting his reward for treason. The North remembered, the songs would say, but Roose Bolton calculated that by the time the North could take revenge, he'd have secured his position so thoroughly that remembering wouldn't matter. Walder Frey's role in the Red Wedding was more personal, driven by pride, wounded beyond reason, and a desire to remind the realm that House Frey demanded respect. The late Lord Frey had endured decades of being mocked, of arriving late to battles, of being seen as crass and grasping despite his strategic position at the Twins. When Robb Stark broke his oath to marry a Frey, Walder saw not just political insult, but personal dismissal. The highborn Stark deciding that even the prettiest Frey wasn't worth keeping a promise for. The massacre became his monument to wounded pride, his proof that betraying House Frey carried consequences. In his hall, surrounded by generations of descendants he barely remembered, Walder Frey orchestrated murder under his own roof and felt satisfaction rather than shame, believing he'd finally taught the realm that even the least of the great houses could destroy a king. The Lannister role in the Red Wedding demonstrated Tywin's willingness to achieve victory through any means available, conventional warfare or conspiracy. He'd been losing the war in the field, his Golden Lion standards retreating before the young wolf's tactical brilliance. Traditional battle wouldn't win, not against Robb Stark's military mind and the North's determination. So Tywin fought a different war, one of letters and promises of finding men whose loyalty could be purchased with titles and land. He blessed and enabled the Red Wedding, gave it Lannister gold and Lannister promises, made himself complicit in the greatest violation of guest right in generations. When news reached King's Landing of Robb Stark's death, Tywin felt triumph rather than guilt. He'd removed his enemy at the cost of his house's honor, and to Tywin that seemed an excellent trade. The Red Wedding's aftermath rippled through Westeros in waves of horror and political realignment. House Frey became synonymous with treachery, their name a curse, their guest right worthless. House Bolton received Winterfell and the nominal rule of the North, though their hold remained tenuous at best. The Starks, who'd seemed poised to win independence, were reduced to scattered survivors. Sansa in King's Landing, then the Vale, Arya wandering Westeros, then Braavos, Bran beyond the Wall, Rickon in hiding. The conspiracy succeeded in its immediate goals, but planted seeds of vengeance that would eventually sprout. The North remembered, and remembering meant that every Frey and Bolton would eventually answer for what happened in that feast hall, for the violation of sacred laws that even the worst enemies had traditionally respected. Littlefinger's manipulation of the Stark-Lannister conflict began even earlier, with his betrayal of Ned Stark in the throne room. When Ned tried to arrest Cersei and secure the succession properly, he trusted that Littlefinger had bought the Gold Cloak's loyalty as promised. Instead, Padder betrayed him at the crucial moment, holding a knife to Ned's throat while the City Watch slaughtered Stark men. The betrayal came wrapped in words about choosing the wrong side, but its real purpose was simpler. Chaos served Littlefinger's purposes, while a stable realm under Ned Stark's honorable rule would have left no room for a master manipulator to maneuver. Ned's capture and eventual execution flowed directly from Littlefinger's betrayal, and with Ned's death, the realm spiraled into war exactly as Peter had calculated. The conspiracy to eliminate Ned Stark involved multiple players with different motivations converging on the same outcome. Cersei wanted him dead to protect her children's secret. Joffrey wanted him dead to prove his own power and cruelty. Littlefinger wanted him dead to destabilize the realm and eliminate a man too honorable to be manipulated. Varys tried to prevent the execution, understanding that killing Ned Stark would make peace impossible. But even the spider's webs couldn't prevent what three determined conspirators wanted. When Ned stood on the steps of the Great Sept of Baelor and confessed to treason he hadn't committed, he did it to save his daughters, believing the promise that confession would mean taking the black instead of dying. Joffrey betrayed that promise with a smile, calling for Sir Eiland's sword, and in that moment sealed the realm's fate in blood and broken faith. Cersei's conspiracy to maintain her power involved eliminating anyone who discovered the truth about her children or threatened her control. She'd already orchestrated Robert's death, having Lancel Lannister get the king drunk before his hunt so a boar could kill him. Robert's death appeared accidental, the risk every man accepted when hunting dangerous prey. But Cersei had ensured the odds shifted in her favor. With Robert dead, she could rule as Queen Regent through Joffrey, maintaining her position at the center of power. Every person who learned about her children's parentage became a target. Jon Arryn died, Ned Stark died, and if Cersei had her way, Tyrion would have died too. The difference between Cersei and more subtle players like Littlefinger was that Cersei wielded power like a hammer, destroying threats openly once she held enough control that subtlety no longer mattered. The conspiracy surrounding Tyrion's trial for Joffrey's murder revealed how easily truth could be bent in service of political convenience. Cersei wanted her brother dead, blamed him for their father's lack of regard for her, for his very existence reminding her that she'd lost her mother. She shaped the trial to ensure his conviction, parading witnesses who lied or told partial truths, creating a narrative where Tyrion's guilt seemed certain. Shay's testimony, coached and false, delivered by a woman Tyrion had loved, cut deeper than any other accusation. The trial was conspiracy dressed as justice, using legal forms to commit murder while maintaining the appearance of lawful process. Only Tyrion's demand for trial by combat prevented immediate execution, and even then Cersei chose the Mountain as champion, a man whose size and cruelty made victory nearly impossible. Varys's role in various conspiracies revealed a spider at the center of many webs, working toward goals he claimed served the realm. He enabled Ned's confession, trying to save his life even if it meant false admission of treason. He helped Tyrion escape after the trial, recognizing that Tyrion was more useful alive than dead. He'd been planning for years to bring back a Targaryen ruler, cultivating Daenerys from afar, positioning pieces for a restoration he believed would benefit the people of Westeros. The eunuch played a longer game than most, thinking in decades while others scrambled for immediate advantage. His conspiracies aimed at stability rather than personal power, though that distinction mattered little to those caught in his schemes. Varys believed he served the realm, but he served it through manipulation and hidden moves, through supporting some rulers and undermining others based on his own judgment of what the people needed. The Grand Maester conspiracy, whispered about but never fully confirmed, suggested that the Citadel itself worked against magic and dragons, preferring a world of reason and science. Maesters sent to serve great houses might also serve the Citadel's larger purposes, subtly influencing lords and ladies toward decisions that weakened the power of magic in the realm. Some believed Maesters had worked to eliminate the last dragons, that they'd counseled against hatching new eggs, that they'd pushed Aegon Fio toward the disaster at Summerhall because they wanted dragons extinct. Whether this conspiracy actually existed or was paranoid fantasy remained uncertain, but the pattern seemed suggestive. Wherever dragons gathered or magic strengthened, Maesters appeared with counsel that coincidentally weakened both. The Citadel held knowledge from an age when magic worked freely, and perhaps they'd decided that age should never return. Qyburn's conspiracy against the established order of knowledge worked differently, embracing what the Citadel rejected. The former Maester conducted experiments the Citadel forbade, studied death and resurrection, created the mountain that rides from a dying man through methods he never fully explained. Qyburn served Cersei because she allowed him to pursue knowledge without limitation, to push past the boundaries that squeamish Maesters imposed. His work on creating the undead warrior Sir Robert Strong represented conspiracy against natural law itself, against the assumption that death meant ending. The results proved effective. Strong never ate, never spoke, never removed his helmet, served with perfect loyalty. Whether Strong still contained any trace of Gregor Clegane or had become something else entirely remained Qyburn's secret. A conspiracy against death itself, successful in creating a guardian beyond normal mortal limitations. The conspiracy of silence around magic and prophecy served those who preferred predictable reality to mysterious truth. When Daenerys Targaryen's dragons hatched, when the White Walkers woke, when magic returned to a world that had forgotten it, the powerful in Westeros largely ignored these developments or dismissed them as irrelevant to their political games. The conspiracy wasn't organized but collective, a shared decision to pretend that the supernatural didn't matter compared to who sat on what throne. This willful blindness would cost the realm dearly when winter came in earnest, when the dead marched south, and only then did the conspirators and schemers realize they'd been playing the wrong game entirely. By the time they understood that magic was real and immediate and dangerous, they'd wasted years and countless lives on struggles that meant nothing compared to the Long Night's return. The doom of Valyria came with 12 years of warning that only one family heeded. A catastrophe foreseen by Daenys the Dreamer and ignored by everyone else. Daenys experienced visions so terrible and certain that she convinced her father Enar Targaryen to abandon their holdings in Valyria and relocate to Dragonstone, a distant outpost that seemed like exile. The other Dragon Lord families mocked this decision, saw it as cowardice or madness, couldn't believe that their mighty civilization with its volcano-taming magic could ever fall. Then the 14 flames erupted simultaneously, tearing Valyria apart in fire and earthquake, drowning the peninsula in ash and magma, killing every Dragonlord family except the Targaryens who'd fled to Dragonstone. Daenerys' prophecy saved her house and doomed them to being the last, to carrying the weight of an entire civilization's extinction, to remembering Valyria while everyone else forgot or mythologized what had been lost. The Targaryens practiced sibling marriage to keep their bloodline pure, a custom that seemed strange to Westerosi but made sense in Valyrian terms. Dragons bonded to Targaryen blood, and diluting that blood risked losing the ability to ride and command them. Each generation that married outside the family weakened the connection, made it less certain that children would possess the affinity for dragons that defined their house. The practice also concentrated power, prevented dragons from spreading to multiple families, kept the ultimate weapons under single house control. But the cost was steep. The madness that plagued Targaryens came partly from this inbreeding. The same blood that carried dragon affinity also carried instability. For every Dragonlord or wise queen, another Targaryen heard voices, burned people alive, descended into paranoia that no medicine or counsel could cure. The coin flip that supposedly determined whether each Targaryen would be great or mad wasn't quite as random as it appeared. Aerys II. Targaryen started his reign reasonable and descended into madness gradually, his paranoia fed by real conspiracies and imagined ones until he couldn't distinguish between them. Viserys grew bitter and cruel from years of exile and poverty, his madness born from circumstances as much as blood. Daenerys showed capacity for both mercy and ruthlessness, her choices shaped by experience and advice as much as inheritance. The madness in the bloodline was real but not deterministic, a vulnerability that stress and isolation could trigger, a tendency toward extremes that wise counsel and love could sometimes temper. The tragedy was that Targaryens often ended up in positions where they were isolated, where power meant having few people brave enough to tell them hard truths, where their worst impulses faced no meaningful checks. Summerhall burned in an attempt to bring dragons back to the world, King Aegon Fev dying alongside dozens of others in flames that consumed the castle. The king had become obsessed with prophecy, with the idea that his line needed dragons to fulfill their destiny. He gathered woods, witches, and pyromancers, consulted old texts about dragon hatching, prepared some ritual meant to wake eggs that had been stoned for generations. Something went catastrophically wrong, whether the magic backfired, whether the wildfire they used proved uncontrollable, whether the dragons themselves rejected the attempt remained unknown. Witnesses reported hearing dragons singing, saw flames that burned hotter than Eos' natural fire, spoke of shadows with wings. Rhaegar Targaryen was born that night amidst smoke and salt, and his grandfather's death, born into a family haunted by what they'd tried and failed to do. The connection between Targaryens and their dragons ran deeper than simple control, a bond that made rider and dragon almost one being. Targaryens didn't truly tame dragons so much as form partnerships with them, relationships built on mutual recognition of something shared. A dragon could have multiple riders across its lifetime, but a rider typically bonded with one dragon, their minds connecting in ways that allowed communication without words. Daenerys felt her dragon's emotions, knew when they hurt or hungered, experienced echoes of their wild joy in flight. This bond meant that a dragon rider's death often affected their dragon profoundly, sometimes causing the creature to refuse other riders or to become dangerously unpredictable. The magic that created this connection remained mysterious even to Targaryens, a legacy from old Valyria that worked without being fully understood. Daenerys Targaryen walked into Drogo's funeral pyre and emerged with 3 living dragons, performing magic that shouldn't have been possible in a world where dragons had died out. Multiple factors converged to make this miracle. The sacrifice of Mirri Maz Duur, a Maegi whose death fed power into the ritual, the blood magic that Mirri herself had used. Daenerys' grief and fury creating emotional intensity that matched the flames. But perhaps most importantly, Daenerys herself was the key, her Targaryen blood responding to conditions that would have killed anyone else. She wasn't immune to all fire. That common misconception misunderstood what happened. The funeral pyre was a unique moment when magic and blood and sacrifice aligned perfectly, when the dragons in the eggs recognized kinship with the woman who held them and chose to wake. The birth of dragons marked the return of magic to the world, a change that rippled outward affecting glass candles in Old Town, warging in the north, prophecies everywhere. The Targaryen tradition of naming dragons after old Valyrian heroes and gods connected each new dragon to a lineage stretching back before the Doom. Drogon carried the name derived from Khal Drogo, but echoed Balerion the Black Dread, the dragon Aegon the Conqueror rode. Rhaegal bore the name of Daenerys' brother Rhaegar, connecting past to present across death. Viserion honored another dead brother, completing a triumvirate of remembrance and legacy. These names weren't simply labels but invocations, ways of carrying history forward, of ensuring that dragons remained tied to specific memories and meanings. When Daenerys named her dragons, she was also claiming her heritage, announcing that House Targaryen and its power had returned to the world after a century of absence. Wildfire earned its nickname Dragonfire because the substance shared properties with dragon, flames, burning green and hot enough to melt stone, impossible to extinguish with water. The Alchemists Guild created wildfire through processes they claimed required magic to work properly, and indeed their abilities waned as magic faded from the world. With dragons extinct, producing wildfire became increasingly difficult, the substance less stable and powerful. But when Daenerys' dragons hatched, pyromancers across Westeros found their craft suddenly easier, their wildfire burning hotter and more consistently. The connection wasn't coincidental. Wildfire's creation involved alchemical processes that somehow tapped the same forces that dragons represented. The Mad King's obsession with wildfire might have been partially driven by this connection. His dragon-loving instincts perverted into loving the closest thing to dragonfire he could obtain, Aerys II. Targaryen's final plan involved burning King's Landing with wildfire, destroying everything rather than letting Robert Baratheon claim his throne. The Mad King had spent months preparing this contingency, placing caches of wildfire throughout the city, under the great sept of Baelor, beneath streets, in cellars and tunnels, enough to consume the entire population in green flames. His pyromancers worked in secret, following orders that became increasingly erratic and cruel. Aerys wanted everyone to burn with him, wanted to be reborn as a dragon from the ashes, genuinely believed that fire would transform rather than simply destroy him. Jaime Lannister killed the king to prevent this final atrocity, but the wildfire remained hidden under King's Landing, a disaster waiting to happen that Cersei would eventually trigger generations later. The tragedy of what Jaime did to save King's Landing was that no one could ever know the full truth without making excuses for kingslaying. He killed Eris before the king could give the order to burn them all, then killed the pyromancer who might have carried out that order, then sat on the Iron Throne waiting to see who would claim it. When Ned Stark arrived and found him there, Jaime couldn't explain without sounding like he was justifying breaking his oath. The secret of what he'd prevented Ahti at him for years, the knowledge that people called him Kingslayer, with contempt when he'd actually saved 500,000 lives. He'd betrayed his vows to keep a greater oath, choosing the lives of innocents over loyalty to a mad king. But loyalty to oaths mattered more to most people than the wisdom of breaking them. Jaime carried this secret as his own burden, rarely speaking of it, letting people think the worst of him because explaining would sound like making excuses. The knowledge that wildfire remained under King's Landing disappeared with those who'd placed it, locations known only to dead pyromancers and a mad king whose orders Jaime had prevented. Centuries could pass with that wildfire aging beneath the city, becoming more volatile and dangerous, waiting for someone to accidentally trigger it or deliberately seek it out. Cersei eventually found some of these caches and used them to destroy the Great Sept of Baelor along with her enemies, demonstrating that Aerys's legacy of fire and destruction lived on through his daughter-in-law's cruelty. The explosion that consumed the Sept showed what Aerys had wanted for the whole city, green flames rising while Cersei watched with satisfaction, finally using the weapon the Mad King had prepared but never deployed. Dragons required enormous amounts of food to sustain their size and power, whole herds of sheep or cattle consumed in meals that would bankrupt ordinary lords. Daenerys's dragons grew from cat-sized hatchlings to creatures large enough to ride within a few years, their growth accelerating with the food they consumed and the exercise they got. But feeding them became a political problem as well as a logistical one, when Drogon started taking children instead of sheep, when farmers complained about livestock losses, when the cost of keeping dragons threatened to outweigh their value as weapons. Daenerys locked 2 of her dragons in the Great Pyramid's darkness, trying to control them through imprisonment, learning too late that dragons couldn't be kept like pets or prisoners. They were forces of nature wearing flesh, wild things that bonded with humans but remained fundamentally untamed. The legend of Azor Ahai spoke of a sword called Lightbringer, forged by driving a blade through his beloved wife's heart to temper it with her sacrifice. Whether this was literal history or symbolic prophecy remained unclear, but the story suggested that great power required terrible sacrifice, that defeating darkness meant being willing to destroy what you loved most. Some believed Lightbringer was an actual flaming sword that would appear again. Others thought it metaphorical, representing sacrifice and choice rather than any physical weapon. The story resonated through Westerosi culture because it captured a hard truth, that heroism often meant doing terrible things for good reasons, that saving the world might require personal costs that seemed unbearable. The prophecy didn't promise a clean or easy victory, only that victory was possible if someone proved willing to pay its full price. The Targaryen bloodline became diluted over generations of marrying into Westerosi houses after Aegon's conquest, each generation having less pure Valyrian heritage. By the time of Robert's Rebellion, most Targaryens were as much Westerosi as Valyrian, carrying mixed blood that showed in features and abilities. Rhaegar and his siblings were half Martell through their mother. Daenerys herself was inbred enough to concentrate the bloodline, but even she wasn't purely Valyrian in the way her ancestors from before the Doom had been. This dilution had advantages. It helped Targaryens integrate with Westeros, made them seem less foreign, reduced some of the more extreme manifestations of family madness. But it also meant that dragon affinity weakened, that the special connection to dragons that defined House Targaryen in Old Valyria became less certain, more unpredictable, dependent on luck and specific inheritance patterns. The secret of Valyrian steel's forging died with the Doom, leaving behind weapons and armor that could never be replicated. These blades stayed sharp without maintenance, were stronger and lighter than normal steel, and crucially could kill White Walkers when ordinary weapons shattered. The process supposedly involved dragonfire and possibly blood magic, combining intense heat with sacrificial power to create metal with magical properties. Even the greatest smiths in Westeros could rework existing Valyrian steel, but not create new blades from raw materials. Every Valyrian steel weapon became a priceless heirloom, passed down through families or given as extraordinary gifts. The scarcity meant that when White Walkers marched south, the realm had perhaps 100 blades total that could effectively fight them, nowhere near enough for the armies that would be needed. Ice, the greatsword of House Stark, was melted down by Tywin Lannister and reforged into 2 smaller blades after Ned's execution. The act represented the destruction of House Stark itself, taking their ancestral weapon and creating Lannister swords from Stark steel. Tywin gave 1 blade to Jaime, who later gave it to Brienne and named it Oathkeeper, a weapon that went on to protect Stark daughters despite being forged from their father's sword. The other blade went to Joffrey and was named Widow's Wail, used briefly before Joffrey's death and later carried by Jaime. The reforging demonstrated how power shifted in Westeros, how symbols of one house could be literally melted and reshaped into symbols of another. But it also showed that Valyrian steel carried its own purpose. Both blades eventually served the North's defense, as if Ice's spirit persisted regardless of the names stamped on the metal reforged from it. The dragon eggs that appeared throughout history after the Targaryen dragons died seemed to be genuinely stone, fossilized beyond any hope of hatching. The dance of dragons had killed many dragons, and those that survived grew smaller and weaker each generation, eventually producing only eggs that never hatched. By the time Aegon III ruled, dragons were extinct, and attempts to hatch remaining eggs failed completely. These stone eggs became decorations and treasures, traded across the world. Their potential seemingly vanished. But Daenerys' success in waking 3 eggs suggested that the right conditions — blood magic, sacrifice, someone with proper bloodline — could bring dragons back from stone. The eggs weren't truly fossilized, but sleeping, waiting for circumstances that wouldn't occur again for over a century after the last dragon died. Dragons were intelligent in ways that humans struggled to understand, not merely clever animals, but beings with their own desires and decisions. They chose their riders as much as riders claimed them. They understood emotional context, responded to courage and fear, seemed to grasp abstractions like loyalty and betrayal. When Viserion died beyond the wall and was resurrected by the Night King, something of the dragon's intelligence remained but twisted, subordinated to the will that controlled its corpse. The dragon that had once been golden and proud became blue-eyed death, breathing not fire but something colder and more terrible. Whether Viserion retained any awareness of what he'd been, or whether death had erased his personality remained unknown. But watching a corrupted dragon attack its former kin demonstrated that dragons could be turned like any creature, their power redirected toward destruction of everything they'd once protected. The Targaryen tradition of sibling marriage faced justified criticism for producing madness, but it also created instances of extraordinary ability. Aegon I, who conquered Westeros, was a product of this tradition, as was Jaehaerys I, remembered as the greatest Targaryen king. The practice was a calculated risk, accepting higher chances of madness in exchange for concentrating the traits that made Targaryens special, including their dragon affinity. In a sense, the Targaryens treated themselves like they treated their dragons, selectively breeding to enhance desired characteristics while accepting that some offspring would prove unstable. The ethical problems with this approach were obvious, but from a purely practical standpoint, it achieved its goal of maintaining their unique abilities across centuries. Only when the dragons died and the reason for concentrated bloodlines disappeared did the cost seem to overwhelm the benefit. The phrase, "the last dragon," was applied to multiple Targaryens across history, each time prematurely. Rhaegar earned this title, then died at the Trident. Viserys called himself the last dragon while beggar and exile. Daenerys became the last dragon when Viserys died, and the title finally found the person who would make it meaningful by bringing actual dragons back into the world. The phrase carried weight beyond its literal meaning. It represented the end of an era, the fading of magic, the extinction of a house and everything it represented. That the last dragon proved to be a woman, that she hatched dragons when everyone believed them gone forever, that she'd been sold and abused and emerged from fire reborn. All of this transformed the title from epitaph to prophecy fulfilled. The White Walkers were created by the Children of the Forest as a weapon against the First Men, a desperate act of self-defense that ultimately threatened all life. Thousands of years before the events of the present, when the First Men invaded Westeros and began cutting down weirwood trees, the children faced extinction. In their desperation, they captured a First Man and drove dragon glass into his heart while he was bound to a weirwood tree, transforming him through dark magic into the first White Walker. The ritual worked. The man became something else, something cold and powerful and hostile to human life. But the children lost control of their creation, discovered too late that weapons designed to kill can't always be aimed precisely, that creating death doesn't mean commanding it. The Night King, as this first walker became known, turned against his creators and began building an army of the dead that threatened children and First Men alike. The spirals and symbols the White Walkers left at massacre sites echoed patterns the Children of the Forest once used, suggesting continuity between creator and creation. These symbols appeared in arrangements of body parts, in formations where the dead were displayed, circular patterns that seemed ritualistic or communicative. Whether the Night King was mocking his creators, continuing practices learned from them, or trying to communicate something remained unknowable. The symbols created unease beyond their gruesome materials. They suggested intelligence and purpose, implied that the White Walkers weren't simply mindless forces of destruction, but beings with their own logic and goals. That these goals remained incomprehensible to humans made them more terrifying, created the sense that humanity faced something fundamentally alien, despite the White Walkers having originated as human themselves. The mark the Night King left on Bran Stark when he touched him during a vision shattered ancient protections and revealed vulnerabilities no one had anticipated. Bran had been watching the Night King through green seeing, observing from what should have been a safe distance across time. But the Night King sensed the observation, turned and looked directly at Bran, reached out and grabbed his arm. the touch left a mark like frostbite, but more significantly, it broke the magical wards protecting the Three-Eyed Raven's cave. Protections that had held for thousands of years failed because Bran carried the Night King's mark, allowing White Walkers and Whites to enter and massacre the children who had been safeguarding that knowledge. The incident demonstrated that even ancient magic had rules and vulnerabilities, that the Night King understood these rules better than those who thought themselves protected. The long night of ancient history, when darkness covered the world for a generation and White Walkers nearly destroyed all life, ended through means that became legend rather than recorded history. The details faded across 8,000 years of oral tradition and fragmentary records. Some accounts spoke of a hero named Azor Ahai, driving back the darkness. Others credited the last hero who sought the children of the forest for help. The Night's Watch claimed their founder, also called the Last Hero, rallied humanity for a final stand. What all versions agreed on was that the White Walkers were somehow defeated or driven back, that the wall was built to ensure they couldn't return, that humanity survived by the narrowest margin. The truth probably combined elements from all these stories, heroes and sacrifice and desperation and luck aligning just enough to push back extinction for another few thousand years. The wall itself was more than simple ice and engineering, a structure infused with magic meant to prevent White Walkers from passing. Built supposedly by Brandon the Builder with help from giants and the children of the forest, the wall stood 700 feet high and stretched across the continent's northern border. But its height mattered less than the spells woven into its foundation, ancient magic that White Walkers couldn't cross and that weakened their powers near it. The Night's Watch who manned the wall didn't understand the magical protections they guarded, saw themselves as defending against wildlings when they were actually maintaining a mystical barrier against something far worse. When the wall finally fell, brought down by the Night King riding the dead dragon Viserion, the breach represented not just a physical barrier destroyed, but a magical protection eliminated. The final ward against the Long Night's return shattered. The children of the forest sacrificed themselves gradually across millennia, their numbers dwindling as humans multiplied and magic faded. The last children lived in caves and hollow hills, preserving ancient knowledge while the world forgot they'd ever existed. Most humans came to believe children were myths, fairy tales told to frighten misbehaving offspring. But they persisted in their hidden places, maintaining the Weirwood network, teaching rare humans like Bran how to access greensight and skin-changing abilities. When the White Walkers attacked the Three-Eyed Raven's cave, some of the last children died fighting their own creation, throwing magic against ice in a desperate attempt to protect Bran and the knowledge he carried. The species that had inhabited Westeros for thousands of years before humans arrived ended almost unnoticed, sacrificed to correct their ancient mistake in creating the Night King. Dragonglass, the obsidian that could kill White Walkers, was volcanic glass formed in the fires of the earth, nature's answer to ice and death. The substance that created the first White Walker could also destroy them, a symmetry that suggested rules underlying the magic of ice and fire. Vast deposits of dragonglass existed beneath Dragonstone, the Targaryen stronghold, placed there by volcanic activity millennia ago. When Jon Snow discovered this and negotiated with Daenerys to mine it, he was arming humanity with the one substance besides Valyrian steel that could effectively fight the army of the dead. The irony was that the tools to fight White Walkers had been present all along, buried under a Targaryen fortress, waiting for someone to connect ancient threats with ancient, weapons. The Night's Watch oath included the phrase, "I am the sword in the darkness. I am the watcher on the walls. I am the fire that burns against the cold, the light that brings the dawn, the horn that wakes the sleepers, the shield that guards the realms of men." But most who spoke these words had forgotten what they actually meant. The Watch had degraded into a dumping ground for criminals and unwanted sons, men who took the black because they had nowhere else to go. They guarded against wildlings while the real threat they'd been established to face had become mythological. Only the oldest members still believed in White Walkers, and they were dismissed as superstitious. The Watch maintained their traditions, lighting fires in the darkness, watching from the wall, standing guard, without understanding that these weren't symbolic duties but practical defenses against an enemy that had simply been sleeping rather than extinct. Craster's arrangement with the White Walkers demonstrated that some form of negotiation or appeasement was possible with them, though the cost proved horrifying. The wildling who lived beyond the wall in relative safety gave his male children to the Walkers, leaving infants in the snow to be collected and transformed. In exchange, Craster remained unmolested, survived in territory where the dead walked, maintained his compound and his daughter wives. The Night's Watch knew about this arrangement, but tolerated it because Craster provided shelter and information when rangers ventured far beyond the wall. The secret suggested that White Walkers could make bargains, that they wanted human children for transformation into more of their kind, that they were building an army methodically rather than simply killing indiscriminately. When Craster finally died and his arrangement ended, the White Walkers lost a steady supply of new recruits, and humanity lost insight into their activities. The transformation of living humans into White Walkers involved the Night King touching them. The same magic that created him now used to create others. An infant would be carried to some altar in the lands of Always Winter, placed there while the Night King approached, touched with a single finger to transform them from human to something else entirely. The process was corruption rather than death, changing the person's fundamental nature while keeping some core of what they'd been. These transformed walkers retained intelligence and could command whites, formed the officer class of the Night King's army. The existence of this transformation process meant that every battle where humans were captured gave the Night King opportunities to create more walkers, that the army of the dead could gain not just soldiers, but commanders from captured enemies. The whites that made up the bulk of the Night King's forces were different from the walkers themselves, reanimated corpses without true intelligence or will. Any dead body could become a white if the Night King chose to raise it. Human, bear, horse, giant, even dragon. These creatures felt no pain, couldn't be reasoned with, stopped only when completely destroyed or when the walker commanding them was killed. The efficiency of whites as soldiers was terrifying. They required no food or rest, felt no fear or doubt, would fight until physically incapable of movement. Every human killed in battle against them immediately became a new enemy soldier unless burned or beheaded. The mathematics of fighting whites favored the dead exponentially, making victory require either destroying the Night King himself or suffering unsustainable casualties to eliminate every white individually. The connection between the Night King and his army meant that killing him destroyed all the White Walkers he'd created and released all the whites from control. This dependency represented both strength and weakness. It allowed the Night King to command vast forces perfectly, but it also meant that defeating him ended the threat entirely, rather than requiring elimination of every individual walker and wight. The Night King served as the single point of failure for the entire army of the dead, a vulnerability that ancient heroes might have discovered during the first long night. If Azor Ahai, or the last hero, had figured out that killing the original walker would end the threat, that knowledge had been lost across the millennia, requiring the current generation to rediscover it through desperate experimentation and sacrifice. Bran's role as the Three-Eyed Raven made him a target because he represented living memory of everything, including the Night King's creation and potential weaknesses. The Night King hunted Bran specifically, pursued him with focused purpose, seemed to prioritize killing the Three-Eyed Raven even over attacking other targets. This suggested that Bran's knowledge represented genuine threat, that the collective memory he accessed might contain secrets the Night King wanted eliminated. Alternatively, the Night King might have sought to eliminate human memory itself, to reduce humanity to creatures living only in the present without past or history. Whatever the specific motivation, the Night King's fixation on Bran indicated that the war between ice and fire wasn't purely physical, but also involved memory, knowledge, and the human capacity to learn from the past. The prophecy or warning that winter is coming carried by House Stark wasn't about seasonal weather, but about the return of the White Walkers, a warning preserved across 8,000 years in a family motto. The Starks were descended from the kings of winter, who ruled the north during and after the Long Night, who helped build the Wall, who understood what it was truly meant to defend against. Their words weren't a statement about the climate, but a reminder that the ancient threat would eventually return, that summer and peace were temporary conditions, that darkness always came again, eventually. That this warning degraded into something people said casually, without understanding its weight or meaning, reflected how thoroughly humanity had forgotten existential threats during centuries of safety behind the wall. The Starks themselves mostly forgot what their words truly meant, reduced to thinking it meant being prepared for harsh winters rather than for the Long Night's return. The horns that supposedly could bring down the wall or summon the dead were another piece of ancient magic whose existence and function remained uncertain. Sam Tarly found a horn in the fist of the First Men, hidden in dragonglass, its purpose unknown. Legends spoke of the Horn of Winter or the Horn of Joramun that could wake giants from the earth or bring down the wall itself. Whether these were the same horn, different horns, or mythical objects that never existed remained unclear. The Night King ultimately brought down the wall without need for horns, using the corrupted dragon Viserion to breathe blue flame that melted ancient ice and magic together. But the existence of multiple legends about horns with power over ice and death suggested that ancient peoples had known other ways to affect the barriers between life and death. Knowledge lost when those who created it died without passing it on completely. The true victory over the Night King came not through prophecy or chosen heroes, but through an unexpected attack by someone the Night King had ignored. Arya Stark drove a Valyrian steel dagger through his chest in the Godswood of Winterfell, shattering him instantly and causing every White Walker and Wight to collapse simultaneously. The kill wasn't foretold in clear prophecy, wasn't accomplished by Azor Ahai or the prince that was promised, came from a girl whose training in death and stealth prepared her for that single moment. The Night King's defeat demonstrated that sometimes salvation came from unexpected quarters, that prophecy might inspire but direct action mattered more, that the person who saved the world might be someone no prophecy mentioned, because destiny was less fixed than people wanted to believe. Varus built his power on a network of informants that stretched across 2 continents. Little birds who whispered secrets into his ears from every corner of the known world. These weren't ordinary spies, but children, often mutilated, trained from early age to go unnoticed and report everything they observed. The eunuch collected orphans and street children, gave them purpose and survival in exchange for their eyes and ears, created a web of intelligence that made him indispensable to whoever ruled. His little birds moved through the Red Keep's walls and tunnels, appeared in places thought secure, heard conversations nobles believed private. The network predated Varus's service to any particular king, continued regardless of who sat on the Iron Throne, represented power that transcended individual rulers. Knowledge was Varus's true loyalty, information his currency, and the children who gathered it for him were tools he claimed to care for, but ultimately sacrificed when necessary. The tunnels beneath King's Landing and the Red Keep formed a maze known fully only to those who had lived there for years, passages that Varus used to move unseen and to position his little birds where they could observe without being observed. Some tunnels dated back to Maegor the Cruel, who had built them as escape routes and then killed the workers who created them to preserve their secrecy. Others were natural caves expanded over generations, or ancient passageways whose original purpose had been forgotten. Varus knew these tunnels intimately, could move from the Red Keep to the city, or from room to room without ever being seen in corridors. This knowledge gave him power beyond his official position. He could be anywhere, hear anything, appear and disappear like a ghost. When Tyrion was arrested, when plots formed in supposedly private chambers, Varus already knew because his tunnels put him everywhere while seeming to be nowhere. Littlefinger's true power came not from his position as Master of Coin, but from his brothels, which served as intelligence-gathering operations disguised as pleasure houses. Lords and merchants who visited these establishments spoke freely, believing that discretion came with the service they purchased. But Peter Baelish heard everything, employed workers who reported conversations and secrets, used sexual vulnerability to create leverage over powerful men. The brothels generated wealth, yes, but more importantly, they generated information and blackmail material. A man's private desires, revealed in what he thought was safety, became tools Littlefinger could deploy years later when that same man stood between him and something he wanted. The genius of the operation was its invisibility. No one suspected that the Master of Coin was also running an intelligence network that rivaled Varus's, that pleasure houses were really stations in a web of information gathering and control. The Faceless Men of Braavos represented perhaps the most secretive organization in the known world. Assassins who could become anyone and who charged prices based on the target's importance rather than flat fees. Their temple, the House of Black and White, trained initiates through years of discipline and mystery, teaching them to abandon their identities and become no one. The process involved wearing faces literally taken from corpses. Magic that allowed assassins to adopt not just appearance but voice and manner of the dead. This made faceless men nearly impossible to detect or prevent. The person standing next to you might be wearing someone else's face, might be an assassin sent by an enemy you'd never considered. The organization supposedly began with slaves in the mines of Valyria, who prayed for death, whose first assassin was a slave who brought the gift of death to those suffering. From those dark origins grew a guild that served death itself, accepting contracts from anyone who could pay their terrible prices. The price the Faceless Men charged scaled with the target's importance and the client's wealth, ensuring that assassination remained available to all but never cheap. A poor man wanting his cruel master dead might pay everything he had, while a wealthy merchant wanting a rival removed would pay a fortune. The cost for killing a king might be a kingdom itself, deliberately prohibitive to prevent casual use of their services for political upheaval. This pricing structure reflected their religious philosophy. Death came for everyone eventually, but hastening death had a cost proportional to the life being taken. When Arya Stark joined them as an acolyte, she learned that the Faceless Men saw themselves as servants of the many-faced god, bringing the gift of death to those whose time had come, executing a service rather than committing murder. Whether this philosophy was genuine religious belief or rationalization for assassination remained ambiguous, but the Faceless Men lived by it absolutely. Jaqen H'ghar appeared in Westeros seemingly by chance, imprisoned in a cage being sent to the Wall, but his presence there was likely deliberate and part of some larger Faceless Men purpose. No ordinary assassin would have been caught and transported with common criminals unless being caught served a goal. Jaqen's interaction with Arya, teaching her the phrase Valar Morghulis, and changing his face in front of her, planted seeds that would eventually lead her to Braavos and the House of Black and White. Whether he'd been sent specifically to recruit her, or whether he simply recognized potential in a highborn girl listing names for death, remained unclear. The Faceless Men operated on time scales, and with purposes that ordinary people couldn't comprehend. Playing games that might take years or decades to resolve, treating individual lives as moves in strategies whose goals stayed hidden even from those they recruited. The Alchemists Guild produced wildfire through processes they claimed required magic to function, their abilities waxing and waning with the strength of magic in the world. For years after the dragons died, creating wildfire became more difficult, the substance less potent and more volatile. But with Daenerys's dragons hatched, pyromancers found their craft suddenly easier, their wildfire burning hotter and more reliably. This connection to dragon magic suggested that the Alchemists Guild possessed knowledge from old Valyria, that wildfire was related to dragonfire through methods kept secret within their order. The guild served whoever ruled King's Landing, producing wildfire for military purposes, for spectacle, for whatever uses kings demanded. Their secrets passed from one generation of pyromancers to the next, a tradition that predated even the Targaryen conquest, linking back to ancient times when magic worked freely and fire held different meanings. The Maesters of the Citadel represented accumulated knowledge and scientific thinking, but some whispered they also represented a conspiracy against magic and dragons. These rumors suggested that Maesters had worked for generations to eliminate magic from the world, seeing it as chaos that prevented the order and reason they valued. Whether this conspiracy actually existed remained uncertain. No Maester would admit to it, and the evidence was mostly circumstantial. But patterns emerged when examined. Maesters counseled against attempting to hatch dragons, seemed present when the last dragons died, pushed lords toward rational decisions that coincidentally weakened magical elements. The possibility that an organization dedicated to knowledge actively worked to eliminate certain types of knowledge created uncomfortable questions about whether the Citadel served learning or controlled it, whether they preserved history or selectively edited it to match their preferences. Qyburn was expelled from the Citadel for his experiments in necromancy and forbidden practices. but his expulsion might have been the Meister's attempt to suppress knowledge they found threatening. The disgraced former Meister continued his research without oversight, created Sir Robert Strong from the dying Gregor Clegane, demonstrated that boundaries the Citadel enforced weren't natural limits but chosen restrictions. Qyburn represented what Meisters could accomplish if they pursued knowledge without ethical constraints, if they studied the dark corners the Citadel forbade. His work proved effective. Strong served Cersei as an unstoppable guardian, never eating or sleeping or removing his helmet. Whether Strong retained any consciousness from his previous life as Gregor Clegane or had become something else entirely, an animated corpse rather than a resurrected man, Qyburn never clarified. The creation demonstrated that death itself could be subverted through sufficient skill and willingness to ignore conventional morality. The Brotherhood without banners operated outside normal hierarchies, a guerrilla force that continued fighting even after the war that created them ended. They'd been sent out by Ned Stark to bring Gregor Clegane to justice, then found themselves cut off when Ned died and the realm descended into chaos. Instead of disbanding, they transformed into something between outlaws and protectors, robbing the rich to feed the poor, defending small folk from soldiers regardless of which side those soldiers served. Beric Dondarrion led them even after being killed and resurrected 6 times by Thoros of Myr, each resurrection taking something from him until he barely remembered who he'd been originally. The Brotherhood represented a different kind of secret organization, not one that hoarded knowledge or power, but one that rejected the authority of kings entirely, choosing to serve abstract ideals of justice even when those ideals contradicted every established law. Thoros of Myr discovered genuine power in the Lord of Light's religion, despite having been a drunk priest who'd mostly lost his faith. When Beric Dondarrion was killed, Thoros prayed over his body in desperation, performing a ritual without really believing it would work, and Beric returned to life. This resurrection repeated 5 more times, each prayer bringing Beric back but leaving him diminished, more focused on single purpose and less fully human. Thoros never fully understood why his prayers worked when more devout priests failed, whether the power came from the god he'd stopped truly believing in or from some other source he'd accidentally tapped. The religion of the Lord of Light proved its power through resurrections and fire magic, through Melisandre's shadow assassins and Thoros's inadvertent miracles, demonstrating that faith could become tangible power even when the faithful themselves doubted. The Faith of the Seven held political power through the Faith Militant until Maegor the Cruel destroyed the military orders and banned the Faith from bearing arms. For centuries afterward, the Faith existed as spiritual authority without military force, dependent on secular rulers for protection and unable to enforce its decrees except through persuasion. Cersei restored the Faith Militant in a desperate bid to eliminate her enemies, not understanding that she was unleashing a power she couldn't control. The High Sparrow used his restored armies to imprison both queens, to put nobles on trial for their sins, to assert religious authority over secular power in ways that hadn't been possible for generations. Cersei's mistake demonstrated how careful previous rulers had been to keep religious and secular authority separated, how dangerous it became when zealous faith gained weapons to enforce its vision of righteousness. The High Sparrow himself represented a different kind of secret, a man whose simplicity and faith might have been genuine, or might have been the most sophisticated performance in King's Landing. He walked barefoot, wore simple robes, preached to the poor, and lived among them, rejecting the wealth and comfort his position could have provided. Whether this was authentic humility or calculated image management remained ambiguous. His power came from appearing to be everything the corrupt nobles were not, from mobilizing the poor and faithful against aristocratic excess. When he put Circe on trial, when he imprisoned Margery, he did so claiming to serve the gods while very effectively serving his own authority. The question of whether he believed his own righteousness or cynically used faith to gain power never got answered. Circe burned him alive in the Sept of Baelor before his true nature could be fully revealed. The Meister's conspiracy, if it existed, would have required coordination across generations of scholars who theoretically served different lords in different kingdoms. Such a conspiracy seemed implausible, yet patterns suggested something organizing Meister's collective actions. They generally opposed magic, counseled against attempting to hatch dragons, promoted rational and scientific thinking over supernatural explanations. When dragons did hatch, when magic returned, Meisters across Westeros found themselves confronted with realities their worldview couldn't accommodate. Whether individual Meisters had knowingly participated in a conspiracy, or whether they'd simply been trained in ways that made them collectively hostile to magic without explicit coordination, the result was similar. An institution supposedly dedicated to knowledge that had systematically worked against certain types of knowledge for generations. The truth about Robert's rebellion itself carried secrets beyond Lyanna's role. A war fought for reasons more complex than the public narrative admitted. Robert claimed to fight for Lyanna, but many lords joined because they saw opportunity to bring down the Targaryen dynasty. The Mad King's atrocities against the Starks provided justification, but ambition and old grievances drove recruitment. Jon Arryn's role in raising his banners and calling for Robert and Ned demonstrated how carefully rebellion had been organized, how the romance narrative of Robert fighting for his kidnapped love simplified a much more calculated uprising. The rebellion succeeded because it aligned multiple interests: Robert's rage, Ned's need for justice for his family, Jon Arryn's political calculation, various lords' desire for change. The love story made better propaganda than admitting it was primarily a coup against an unstable king. Rhaegar Targaryen's true motivations for running away with Lyanna Stark carried secrets that died with him at the Trident. He was obsessed with prophecy, believed his children had roles to play in saving the world, read constantly about the prince that was promised. Whether he loved Lyanna genuinely or saw her as necessary for prophecy's fulfillment remained unknown. The prince who seemed to have everything, marriage, children, the throne's succession secured, risked it all for a northern girl, started a war, doomed his dynasty. Perhaps he foresaw through prophecy that his child with Lyanna would be crucial to defeating the Long Night. Perhaps he simply fell in love and made the catastrophic decision to follow his heart despite consequences. The truth died with Rhaegar, leaving only speculation about whether he was prophet, romantic, or deluded fool who destroyed his family for prophecy that might have been misinterpreted. The lie about the Trident became accepted history. The story that Robert Baratheon killed Rhaegar in single combat and proved the righteousness of his cause. The battle happened as described. Robert and Rhaegar fought while armies clashed around them. Robert's warhammer crushed Rhaegar's breastplate and killed him. Rubies from the prince's armor scattered into the river, but victory in single combat didn't prove justice in cause, didn't validate rebellion or condemn the man who lost. Rhaegar died and Robert lived, and from that accident of combat outcome came a dynasty. Had Rhaegar killed Robert instead, the rebellion might have collapsed. The Mad King might have burned half the realm in retaliation. The entire future would have spun differently from that single moment on a river ford. History treated Robert's victory as destiny, but it was really just one outcome among many possible ones, given meaning only by what followed. Ned Stark's mercy toward Cersei's children demonstrated both his honor and his fatal tendency toward warning enemies instead of destroying them. When he discovered the truth about Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen's parentage, he gave Cersei chance to flee, rather than immediately exposing her. He couldn't bear the thought of children dying for their parents' sins, couldn't stomach the idea of 3 innocents executed for being born of incest. This compassion cost him everything. Cersei used the time Ned gave her to prepare her counterstrike, to ensure that when the truth came out, she'd control the narrative and have Ned arrested instead of exposed. The secret of Ned's character was that his honor made him predictable, that knowing he'd choose mercy over ruthlessness gave his enemies the opening they needed to destroy him. A more pragmatic man would have acted first and regretted later, but Ned couldn't be that man even when being that man might have saved his life and prevented war. The secret that almost everyone in King's Landing knew but nobody acknowledged was that Joffrey was unstable and cruel even before becoming king. Robert knew his supposed son was vicious, had watched the boy torture animals and abuse servants. Cersei knew her son took after the worst Lannister tendencies without the intelligence to hide it. The court knew that when Joffrey ruled, he'd be a disaster. But admitting this truth meant admitting the succession was flawed, meant either declaring the king's heir unfit or tacitly accepting that a monster would soon hold absolute power. So everyone maintained polite fiction that Joffrey was young and would mature, that his cruelty was childish behavior he'd outgrow. This collective lie persisted until Joffrey actually took the throne and proved exactly as terrible as everyone had quietly known he would be, though by then it was too late to prevent his coronation without civil war. The revelation that changed everything for many characters was the simple truth that they'd been lied to about fundamental aspects of their world. Jon Snow learning his parentage, Theon Greyjoy discovering his identity as neither Stark nor truly Greyjoy, Arya realizing the honorable nobility she'd been raised to believe in was mostly performance. These revelations shattered and remade people. The secrets weren't just hidden information, but foundations on which identities and worldviews rested. When the foundations proved false, everything built on them became questionable. This was the true power of the secrets that changed everything. Not that they altered external circumstances, though they did that too, but that they transformed how people understood themselves and their place in a world far more complicated and morally ambiguous than they'd been taught to believe. Balon Greyjoy's death on that swaying rope bridge during a storm appeared accidental, but carried too many suspicious elements to be simple misfortune. The Lord of the Iron Islands fell to his death the same night his brother Euron returned after years of exile, a coincidence that seemed too convenient for coincidence. Euron had been banished for seducing Victarion's wife, had sailed the world on the Silence with a crew whose tongues he'd cut out, had returned precisely when Balon's death created a succession crisis. Some whispered that Euron hired a faceless man to eliminate his brother, that the exorbitant price he paid was the dragon egg he claimed to have found and thrown into the sea. Whether supernatural assassin or natural accident, aided by fraternal murder, Balon's death opened the way for Euron to seize power and lead the Ironborn in new directions. The truth remained hidden behind Euron's mad smile and the silence of witnesses who couldn't speak. Myrcella Baratheon died from poison administered by Ellaria Sand as revenge for Oberyn Martell's death, the innocent child punished for her grandfather's sins. The girl who'd been sent to Dorne as a hostage and found happiness there, who'd been treated kindly by Prince Doran and come to love the place of her captivity, died because Ellaria couldn't accept that Oberyn had chosen to fight as champion and lost. The poison was the long farewell, giving Myrcella time to say goodbye to her uncle Jaime before dying in his arms. The murder demonstrated the endless cycle of revenge that consumed Westeros. Oberyn died fighting for Tyrion. Ellaria killed Myrcella to avenge Oberyn. Eventually, Ellaria herself would lose her daughter Tyene the same way. Each death demanded another death, each act of revenge spawning new grievances, the cycle perpetuating itself across generations until entire houses could be consumed by feuds that started with single violent acts. Robert Baratheon's death was no accident, but murder carefully orchestrated by Cersei, who had Lancel Lannister ensure the king drank enough wine that his judgment and reflexes were compromised during the hunt. The boar that gored Robert would likely have been killed by a sober king, a dangerous animal, but one that experienced hunters regularly faced and defeated. But drunk, slowed, unable to react properly, Robert made mistakes that cost him his life. The wound festered, infection spreading faster than even Grand Maester Pycelle's treatments could counter, death arriving inevitably over days of suffering. Cersei watched her husband die and felt relief rather than grief, saw his death as liberation from years of marriage to a man who loved a dead woman and called out Lyanna's name in bed. The conspiracy was simple. Keep the king drunk, let nature and the boar do the rest, appear devastated while actually celebrating freedom. Joffrey's wine cup carried the Strangler, a poison so named because victims choked as their throats closed, unable to breathe as they clawed at their necks in desperation. Olenna Tyrell obtained the poison from Littlefinger, who had it concealed in the crystals of Sansa's hairnet, trusting that attention would fall on Tyrion rather than investigating the actual source. The poison worked quickly once dissolved in wine, giving Joffrey only moments between drinking and dying. The Purple Wedding earned its name from Joffrey's face turning purple as he suffocated, a gruesome death that seemed fitting punishment for a cruel king, but was actually just murder, dressed in the coincidence of appropriate symbolism. Olenna arranged the death to protect Margaery from a marriage that would have been intolerable, choosing political assassination over allowing her granddaughter to suffer years under Joffrey's sadism. Lady, Sansa's direwolf, died at Robert's command to satisfy Cersei's demand for justice after Joffrey lied about his encounter with Arya. The direwolf had done nothing wrong, had been separated from Arya during the incident with Nymeria, but Cersei wanted a direwolf dead, and Robert wouldn't deny her. Ned Stark killed Lady himself rather than letting executioners do it, giving the wolf a quick death from someone who cared about her rather than rough handling from strangers. The injustice of that moment haunted Ned, killing an innocent creature to appease the queen's spite, watching Sansa's connection to the North die with her direwolf, understanding that this was just the first of many compromises that would be demanded of him as Hand. Lady's death symbolized the destruction of Stark innocence, the beginning of losses that would eventually consume nearly the entire family. The mystery of who sent the cat's paw assassin to kill Bran Stark while he lay unconscious after his fall carried its own revelations. Initially, everyone assumed the Lannisters sent the killer, evidence seemingly pointing to Tyrion, whose blade was found on the assassin. But the truth emerged later. Joffrey had sent the killer, not out of malice toward Bran specifically, but from twisted mercy. The boy king had overheard Robert saying it would be kinder to end Bran's suffering than let him live as a cripple, interpreted this as instruction, sent an assassin with a valuable blade to accomplish what he thought his father wanted. The attempt failed because Summer, Bran's direwolf, killed the assassin, but Joffrey's involvement demonstrated his dangerous combination of cruelty and stupidity, his tendency to act on misunderstood fragments of conversation without grasping larger context or consequences. Tywin Lannister died on a privy, shot by Tyrion with a crossbow after Tyrion discovered Shae in his father's bed. The Hand of the King, the man who'd orchestrated the Red Wedding and dominated Westerosi politics for decades, died ignominiously while sitting on a toilet. The location of his death became part of the story's bitter irony. The man who cared so deeply about family legacy, who worked constantly to elevate House Lannister, who treated his dwarf son with contempt for embarrassing the family, died in the most undignified way possible. Tyrion shot him twice, the second arrow loosed while Tywin sat dying from the first. The dwarf son murdering the father who'd never shown him love or respect. The smell that followed Tywin's death became legendary. His corpse stank of decay far beyond normal decomposition, as if all the metaphorical rot inside him became literal in death. The truth about Shae's presence in Tywin's bed and her testimony at Tyrion's trial revealed the cruel reality that love could be purchased, and loyalty was a commodity rather than a virtue. Shae had been Tyrion's lover, had whispered promises of caring for him regardless of wealth or power, had seemed genuinely devoted. But when Tywin offered her money and position, she betrayed Tyrion completely, testified against him with intimate details meant to humiliate, then took up residence in the Tower of the Hand as Tywin's lover. Whether she'd always been playing Tyrion, or whether Tywin's offer simply proved more valuable than whatever affection she'd felt, the result was the same. Another lesson that trust was dangerous and everyone had their price. Tyrion strangled her before killing his father, murdering the woman he'd loved because her betrayal cut deeper than any other wound he'd suffered. Rickard Karstark's execution by Robb Stark was politically disastrous but morally necessary. A choice between justice and practical advantage that demonstrated Robb's fatal tendency toward honor over pragmatism. Karstark had murdered Lannister prisoners to avenge his sons, violated sacred rules about prisoners, and committed treason against his king. Robb understood that executing Karstark would cost him half his army as the Karstark men abandoned the cause, but he couldn't allow such betrayal to go unpunished without looking weak. The execution demonstrated Robb's Stark nature. Like Ned, he chose the honorable path even when it meant political suicide. A more calculating king would have imprisoned Karstark, found some compromise, maintained unity until after victory. But Robb couldn't be that king, couldn't compromise on justice even when compromise meant survival. The Hound's supposed death after his fight with Brienne of Tarth proved to be another deception. Sandor Clegane surviving his wounds and finding unlikely peace on the Quiet Isle. Arya had left him dying beside a road after refusing to give him the mercy of a quick death, taking her revenge for all his past crimes by letting him suffer. But someone found him and brought him to the monastery, where Septons cared for him, and eventually he chose to stay, working in silence and finding something approaching redemption. The man who'd killed for money and followed orders to commit atrocities became, for a time, a gravedigger seeking peace. Whether this transformation was genuine or temporary, whether Sandor found actual redemption or merely rest before returning to violence, his supposed death allowed him to disappear from the Game of Thrones and discover whether he could be something other than the Hound. Lysa Arryn's death appeared to be suicide, her fall through the moon door at the Eyrie witnessed by Sansa as a woman throwing herself from the castle in despair. The reality was murder. Littlefinger pushed her after she threatened Sansa in jealous rage, eliminated the wife he'd manipulated into killing Jon Arryn once she'd served her purpose. Peter's ability to convince Lysa's guards and lords that she'd committed suicide demonstrated his skill at managing narratives, at making murder appear natural, at removing obstacles while maintaining innocent appearances. Lysa died, never understanding that Littlefinger had used her from the beginning, that he'd never loved her despite his promises, that she'd killed her husband and betrayed her sister for a man who saw her only as a tool. Her death cleared the way for Littlefinger to become Lord Protector of the Vale, advancing his climb toward power by eliminating the woman who had been essential to his rise. The secret of Longclaw, the Valyrian steel blade Jon Snow received from Jeor Mormont, carried its own hidden significance. Mormont claimed his son Jorah had disgraced the blade, and he wanted it to go to someone worthy, that he'd had the pommel changed from a bear to a wolf as gift to Jon. But giving such a valuable weapon to a young steward seemed unusual unless Mormont knew or suspected something about Jon's true importance. Whether Mormont had inklings about Jon's parentage, whether he'd simply recognized exceptional potential, or whether he wanted to ensure Valyrian steel remained at the wall where it might be needed against White Walkers, the gift proved crucial. Longclaw killed Whites and White Walkers both, served Jon through battles that shaped the realm's fate, became a sword that mattered not for its previous owner, but for what its new bearer accomplished with it. Heartsbane, the Valyrian steel sword of House Tarly, represented everything wrong with inheritance and tradition when in the hands of Randyll Tarly, but became instrument of salvation when Sam stole it. Randyll despised his eldest son for being fat and bookish instead of martial, sent Sam to the wall to prevent him inheriting, treasured a sword he wielded without honor. Sam's theft of Heartsbane when he left for the Citadel represented not just taking family property, but claiming the right to determine his own worth, rejecting his father's judgment. The sword eventually served at the Battle of Winterfell, Valyrian steel against the dead, fulfilling its purpose under someone who'd been deemed unworthy by traditional standards, but proved worthy through courage and choice. Heartsbane demonstrated that the value of Valyrian steel lay not in whose house owned it, but in who wielded it when darkness came. The dagger that the cat's paw carried when he tried to kill Bran traveled through many hands, its origin mysterious but its significance growing with each owner. The Valyrian steel blade with dragonbone handle supposedly belonged to Tyrion, then to Littlefinger, who lost it in a bet, then to the cat's paw assassin, then to Catelyn, who took it after Summer killed the assassin, then to Littlefinger again, then to Bran, who gave it to Arya. The dagger's journey mirrored the journey of secrets themselves, passing from person to person, each one using it for their own purposes, eventually arriving where it needed to be. When Arya drove that dagger into the Night King's chest, the blade that had once been sent to kill Bran instead saved the world through his sister's hand, an object whose purpose was rewritten by the people who held it and the choices they made. Ice, before being reforged into Oathkeeper and Widow's Wail, had served House Stark for generations as symbol of their authority and justice. Ned Stark used ice to execute Will, the Night's Watch deserter, who tried to warn about White Walkers, the first hint of the true threat that everyone ignored. He carried ice to King's Landing and would have used it to enforce Robert's will if things had gone differently. Instead, Elend Payne used ice to behead Ned himself, the blade that symbolized Stark justice turned against its bearer. The poetic cruelty of Ned dying from his own sword, of ice serving his execution, added to the tragedy. When Tywin had ice melted and reforged, he was trying to erase House Stark, but the blades created from Ned's sword ended up serving Stark causes despite Lannister intentions. Oathkeeper protecting Sansa and Arya, Widow's Wail eventually wielded by Jaime, who fought for the living at Winterfell. The Horn of Winter supposedly had power to wake giants from the earth or bring down the wall, but whether this artifact truly existed or was just legend remained uncertain. Sam found a horn buried with dragon glass at the Fist of the First Men, ancient and decorated with mysterious runes. Whether that horn was the legendary Horn of Winter, whether it had any power at all, whether it required specific conditions or rituals to activate, none of these questions got answered. The Night King brought down the wall without need of horns, using corrupted dragon fire instead. But the existence of legends about horns with power over ice and giants suggested that ancient people had known ways to affect the barriers between worlds, that objects of power existed beyond swords and crowns, that some artifacts remained hidden or lost, waiting for someone to discover them and learn whether they were magical tools or simply old metal and bone. The crown of Aegon the Conqueror was simple steel and rubies, deliberately plain compared to elaborate crowns of other kingdoms. Aegon understood that ruling Westeros meant appearing as first among equals rather than foreign conqueror, that Westerosi respected martial symbols more than elaborate decoration. The crown represented power through restraint, authority that didn't need to prove itself through ostentation. Each subsequent Targaryen king wore that same simple crown, connecting themselves to Aegon's conquest and legitimacy. When Robert Baratheon took the throne, he could have forged a new crown but chose to wear Aegon's, claiming Targaryen authority rather than rejecting it. The crown represented something deeper than decoration. It was the physical symbol of ruling all 7 kingdoms, worn by conqueror and rebel king alike, its simplicity making it more powerful than any elaborate alternative. The poison, known as the Tears of Lice, killed slowly and appeared like natural illness, making it perfect for assassinations that needed to avoid suspicion. Jon Arryn died from this poison, his death attributed to natural causes, the truth hidden until Lysa's confession revealed what she'd done. The poison burned through stomach and bowels, created agony before death, but mimicked diseases well enough that maesters diagnosed fever rather than murder. Houses across Westeros had probably used Tears of Lice to eliminate rivals, parents, spouses, inconvenient heirs, their murders disguised as natural death. The poison represented assassination's subtlest form, not dramatic or quick like the Strangler, not obvious like a blade or arrow, but slow degradation that appeared to be the body failing rather than being failed by poison. Its effectiveness came from perfect deniability, from killing in a way that rarely raised suspicions of foul play. The Iron Throne itself was forged from the swords of defeated kings, created by Aegon after conquest by melting 1,000 blades in dragon fire. The throne was deliberately uncomfortable, designed with edges and points that made it impossible to sit easily, representing Aegon's belief that ruling should never be comfortable. Successive kings cut themselves on the throne's edges, the seat physically dangerous to those who occupied it. Legend said the Iron Throne itself rejected unworthy kings by cutting them, that Aerys II's frequent cuts proved his unworthiness to rule. Whether the throne had supernatural judgment, or whether it was simply sharp metal and nervous kings fumbled around it, the symbolism remained powerful. Ruling Westeros was dangerous. Authority came with wounds. Sitting on the Iron Throne meant accepting that power cut those who held it. The truth that many characters discovered too late was that the Game of Thrones was ultimately meaningless compared to the real threats that existed beyond political intrigue. While lords and ladies schemed over the Iron Throne, White Walkers marched south with an army of the dead. While houses betrayed each other over power and succession, winter threatened to consume everything. The secrets that truly mattered weren't which house would rule, but whether humanity would survive, weren't bloodlines and prophecies, but the simple question of whether the living could unite against the dead. The revelation that changed everything wasn't about hidden identities or political conspiracies, but about priority. That squabbling over thrones while existential threat approached was the greatest foolishness. That the Game of Thrones was a distraction from the real game of survival versus extinction. The connection between the Stark words "winter is coming" and the Targaryen words "fire and blood" represented opposing forces that needed each other to maintain balance in the world. Ice and fire weren't simply enemies, but complementary powers, each necessary to check the other. Neither meant to dominate completely. The Starks descended from the first men who had made peace with the children of the forest, carried blood that allowed warging and greensight, represented ice and winter in human form. The Targaryens carried fire in their veins, rode dragons that breathed flame, survived temperatures that would kill ordinary people. When these houses finally united through Jon and Daenerys, through revealed parentage and unlikely alliance, they brought together powers that ancient prophecy suggested needed combination to face darkness. The Song of Ice and Fire wasn't about one defeating the other, but about both singing together against silence and death. Daenerys' inability to have children after Mirri Maz Duur's blood magic created complications for succession that her eventual death made irrelevant. But the curse itself revealed truths about magic's cost. Mirri had told Daenerys she'd bear no living child, that only death could pay for life, that the price for Drogo's resurrection was Daenerys' fertility. Whether this was literal curse or simply trauma from the difficult birth of her stillborn son, Daenerys believed herself barren, and that belief shaped her decisions. She couldn't create dynasty through heirs of her body, meaning her claim to the throne rested entirely on conquest and legitimacy through bloodline rather than future succession. The irony was that Jon Snow, who could have been her heir through blood if not her child, represented the continuation of Targaryen line she thought ended with her. The curse trapped Daenerys in thinking herself the last when actually she'd found family in the nephew she didn't know existed. Theon Greyjoy's torture and transformation into Reek represented a death of identity more complete than physical death, the destruction of selfhood through systematic abuse. Ramsay Bolton broke Theon methodically, not just through physical torture but through psychological destruction, forcing him to reject his name and accept a new identity built entirely on submission. The boy who'd been torn between Stark and Greyjoy, who'd betrayed the family that raised him and failed the family he was born to, lost both identities and became nothing. His journey back from Reek to something approximating Theon again was a resurrection without magic, a reclaiming of self from complete destruction. Theon's story demonstrated that identity could be murdered and resurrected, that becoming no one wasn't just what faceless men did voluntarily, but what torture could inflict, that finding yourself again after being erased was its own kind of heroism. The moment Jaime Lannister pushed Bran from the tower window changed everything for multiple characters, while appearing to be a simple attempt to protect a secret. Jaime acted without thinking deeply, saw a child who'd witnessed him and Cersei together, calculated instantly that the secret's exposure would doom his children, and chose murder. The push failed to kill Bran, but sent him into a coma that awakened his green sight abilities, started him on the path toward becoming the Three-Eyed Raven. Jaime's attempt to eliminate a witness instead created the person who would eventually see and understand everything, who would know the truth not just of that moment, but of thousands of years of history. The failed murder became the catalyst for Bran's transformation, proving that sometimes the worst acts create unexpected consequences, that trying to suppress truth can create someone who sees all truths. Catelyn Stark's treatment of Jon Snow throughout his childhood carried weight that she only understood after her own children were scattered and endangered. She'd been cold to the boy she believed was Ned's bastard, a constant reminder of her husband's supposed infidelity, someone whose presence in Winterfell felt like insult added to her marriage. She'd wished him dead when he lay fevered, then immediately prayed to spare him if only she could take back that wish, promised to love him as her own if he lived. But when Jon recovered, she broke that promise, couldn't overcome her resentment. The tragedy was that Jon was actually her nephew, that her coldness toward him was based on a lie Ned maintained to protect him. Catelyn died, never knowing that the boy she'd resented was Stark blood, that if she'd known the truth, she might have loved him as she loved her own children. The decision to send Theon Greyjoy back to the Iron Islands was Robb Stark's first major mistake, trusting that the boy raised as hostage would value his fostering over his blood family. Robb believed Theon was his brother in all but name, that years at Winterfell had made him more Stark than Greyjoy. But Theon felt constantly caught between worlds, never fully accepted by either, and, when given chance to prove himself to his father, chose betrayal over loyalty. The decision to capture Winterfell seemed like opportunity to finally be valued by Balon Greyjoy, to prove himself a true Ironborn. Instead, it destroyed what little identity Theon had, cost him everything, including, eventually, his sense of self. Robb's mistake wasn't trusting Theon specifically, but not understanding how deeply identity confusion had damaged him, how desperate he was to be fully accepted somewhere. Sansa Stark's survival through years of captivity in King's Landing and abuse at Littlefinger, and Ramsay's hands, transformed her from naive girl into someone who understood power's reality better than most. She'd started the series wanting songs and romance, believing in knights and noble lords, trusting that honor and truth mattered. Every illusion was stripped from her through trauma. She watched her father beheaded, was abused by Joffrey, was married against her will multiple times, suffered violence that should have broken her. Instead, she learned, absorbed lessons from Cersei and Littlefinger, and her own suffering, emerged as someone who could play the Game of Thrones as well as anyone. Her transformation demonstrated that survival itself was a kind of power, that enduring terrible things created understanding that privilege and safety never could. The Purple Wedding's chaos allowed Sansa to escape King's Landing with Littlefinger, beginning her journey from prisoner to player. In the confusion of Joffrey's death and Tyrion's arrest, no one noticed Sansa disappearing with Ser Dontos, who took her to a ship where Littlefinger waited. The knight she thought was helping her from kindness had actually been Littlefinger's paid agent all along, another deception in an endless series. Sansa's escape seemed like rescue, but was actually just transfer from one manipulator to another, from Lannister captivity to Littlefinger's control. She wouldn't truly be free until she learned to see through manipulation completely, to understand that rescue often just meant a different kind of captivity, that real freedom came from becoming someone who couldn't be used anymore. Tyrion's trial by combat depended on Oberyn Martell's hunger for revenge against the Mountain who'd killed his sister and her children. Oberyn agreed to champion Tyrion not from friendship, but because fighting Gregor Clegane gave him opportunity to confront the man who'd murdered Elia Martell. The combat itself was almost victory. Oberyn's speed and skill with spear and poison gave him advantage. He wounded the Mountain mortally. But his need to hear confession, his demand that Gregor admit who'd ordered Elia's death, his rage at the man responsible for his sister's suffering, made him careless at the crucial moment. The Mountain seized that moment of inattention, dragged Oberyn down, crushed his skull while confessing to the murder and rape. Tyrion lost his champion and faced execution. Oberyn got the confession he wanted but died hearing it, and the Mountain died slowly from poison, but not before ensuring Oberyn died first. The moment Tyrion killed Shae changed him fundamentally, destroyed whatever innocence or hope he'd maintained through all his other traumas. He'd loved her genuinely, as much as he was capable of loving anyone, had believed she might love him for himself rather than his gold. Her betrayal at the trial cut deeper than anything his father or sister had done, but murdering her in Tywin's bed completed his transformation from scorned dwarf trying to prove his worth into something darker. He strangled the woman he'd loved, then immediately killed his father, committed double murder in the Tower of the Hand, and became exile and kinslayer both. The experience poisoned something essential in Tyrion, made him more cynical and vicious when he'd already been plenty cynical. He survived but lost pieces of himself that couldn't be recovered. Arya's list of names, the prayer she recited before sleep, represented her transformation from noble daughter into instrument of vengeance. The list started with Joffrey, Cersei, the Mountain, the Hound, and grew to include everyone who'd wronged her family or killed people she loved. Each night she'd whisper the names, maintaining hatred across years, refusing to forgive or forget. The list kept her focused during the worst times, gave her purpose when everything else was stripped away. But it also trapped her in anger, defined her by revenge rather than allowing her to become anything else. When she finally abandoned the list, left revenge behind to return to her family, she reclaimed herself from the death cult she had almost been consumed by. The names that had sustained her almost became the bars of a prison she'd built for herself. Brienne of Tarth swore an oath to Catelyn Stark to find and protect her daughters, then spent years trying to fulfill that vow after Catelyn died. She searched for Sansa through the Riverlands and the Vale, eventually found her and swore service to protect her. She traveled with Jaime, formed an unlikely bond with the Kingslayer, received Oathkeeper, and carried the Valyrian Steelblade in service to the Stark girls. Her entire arc demonstrated that honor and oaths still mattered in a world that seemed to have abandoned both, that keeping your word was possible even when circumstances made it nearly impossible. Brienne represented what knights were supposed to be, what the ideals claimed to stand for, proving through actions that the values everyone else treated as naive pretense could actually be lived. Podrick Payne's loyalty to Tyrion, and then to Brienne, showed how service and honor could exist in the least likely places, how a simple squire could embody nobility that lords and ladies lacked. Pod had every reason to abandon Tyrion when his master was arrested and condemned, when serving him meant sharing disgrace. Instead, he stayed loyal, visited him in the black cells, stood by him when no one else would. Later, he followed Brienne on her quest, learned from her how to fight properly, proved himself brave despite being inexperienced. Pod's story was a quiet one. No prophecies or dramatic destiny, just a boy who chose to be loyal and grew into a man who understood that honor meant keeping faith with people even when circumstances made it costly. The Brotherhood. Without Banners's repeated resurrections of Beric Dondarrion demonstrated that death could be cheated, but always at a cost, that coming back diminished the person who returned. Each time Thoros brought Beric back, the man lost memories and pieces of himself, became more focused on single purpose and less fully human. By the sixth resurrection, Beric barely remembered his former life, his past fading like morning mist. He existed for one thing: fighting for the living, protecting the innocent, serving the Lord of Light. When he finally died, permanently saving Arya and the Hound, he'd already been mostly gone, the seventh death simply completing a process that started with the first. His story warned that resurrection wasn't the gift it appeared, that life after death wasn't the same as life before it. The Hound's relationship with the Stark sisters, protecting Sansa in King's Landing and traveling with Arya through the Riverlands, showed glimpses of the man he might have been without his brother's cruelty and his father's failures. Sandor Clegane was made into the Hound by trauma, by his brother burning his face and his father covering it up, by years of serving Lannisters and committing atrocities. But with Sansa, he showed unexpected gentleness, protecting her from Joffrey, offering to take her away from King's Landing. With Arya, he formed a partnership that approached friendship despite their mutual antagonism. These moments revealed that beneath the brutality was someone capable of caring, that the Hound was a role he played because circumstances had given him no other option. His journey toward the Quiet Isle and then back into violence suggested a man caught between what he was forced to become and what he might have been. Sandor Clegane's final confrontation with his brother Gregor during the burning of King's Landing represented both revenge fulfilled and pointless waste. The Hound had spent his entire life hating his brother, carrying the scars of childhood burning, dreaming of killing the man who'd made him a monster. When he finally got his chance, fighting Gregor in the collapsing Red Keep while wildfire consumed the city, he achieved revenge but died doing it. The brothers killed each other, fell together into flames, ended their long hatred through mutual destruction. The moment demonstrated the futility of revenge as life purpose. Sandor got what he wanted, killed his brother, and gained nothing from it except death. Had he stayed on the Quiet Isle, found actual peace, he might have lived. Instead, he chose vengeance, and proved that sometimes winning means losing everything. The moment Jon Snow chose to kill Daenerys after she'd burned King's Landing represented the hardest decision anyone in the series faced: love versus duty taken to its extreme conclusion. Jon loved Daenerys, had bent the knee to her, had made love to her despite learning she was his aunt, had tried to believe she could be the queen Westeros needed. But when she burned the city, killed thousands who'd already surrendered, revealed that her vision of breaking the wheel meant destroying anyone who opposed her. Jon recognized what he had to do. The kiss that turned into assassination was intimate betrayal, killing someone while holding them, choosing the realm over the woman he loved. Jon's choice honored Ned Stark's lesson that duty sometimes meant doing terrible things, that leadership required sacrifices that shattered the person making them. The Iron Throne's destruction by Drogon after Daenerys' death carried symbolic weight that closed the series' central question about power and who deserved to wield it. The dragon recognized that the throne itself was the poison, that the Game of Thrones had destroyed his mother and countless others, that the symbol of power was itself the problem. By melting the throne with dragon fire, Drogon eliminated the object that everyone had fought over, removed the physical representation of absolute authority. Whether the dragon understood this symbolically or simply reacted to grief and anger, the result was the same. The Iron Throne that had existed for 300 years, that represented Targaryen conquest and Westerosi unity, ceased to exist. The Game of Thrones could finally end because there was no throne left to compete for, no single seat of power worth dying to possess. Bran Stark becoming king represented the ultimate irony. The boy who'd been pushed from a tower because he'd seen too much becoming the man who saw everything, whose knowledge of all history made him the one person who couldn't be manipulated or deceived. The three-eyed raven held no personal ambitions, wanted no throne, cared nothing for power in traditional sense. He existed as living memory, witness to truth, someone who could rule from knowledge rather than desire. His selection as king represented a complete break from hereditary succession and conquest, choosing wisdom and knowledge over bloodline and force. Whether this experiment in having someone who wanted nothing actually rule could succeed remained uncertain when the story ended, but it at least offered a possibility of leadership based on understanding rather than ambition.